The homework for chapter 1 is modeling the need for these different types of probability sampling methods. So there's one bias that happens a lot, and that's convenience sampling. And so notice the farmer selected all these far away from the river. So hopefully when you think about how crops grow and what they need, being far away from the river might be an issue. So what you're asked to do in this homework assignment is pick a different method that might best represent what's happening. And so the next one is simple random sample. And we know that that has to be random. So there are 100 plots. And if you number these, you can number them any way you want. But I might start over here and call this 1, 2. So 3, go all the way across. And there are 10. So this would be plot 11. This would be plot 21, and so forth. This bottom one would be 100. And what you're asked to do is select 10 plots. So you can use the table that was illustrated in the notes. You can use a random number generator that's online, and it shows you there, or you can use your calculator. So hopefully by now you've been able to download that calculator if you don't already have one. So here's what it's going to look like when you download. And we're going to pick some random numbers. So I'm going to turn my calculator on. I'm going to clear the screen. So what I want to do is collect some numbers, and I want 10 of them. So there are some directions that are going to be provided later on, and I'll also write these up and put them in the directions on WAMAP itself. But let's go into math. We're going to go over to probability. And we're going to select this button called randint. It's an integer, so it's going to be a number with no decimals after it. And we're going to pick any number between 1 and 100. So the first number my calculator selects, yours will be different than that, is 68. So I'm going to find 68 on my grid. So if this is 21, 31, 41, 51, 61, 62, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And so that would be where my calculator would generate that first random number. Now remember, we need 10 of these. So I'm going to hit enter again, and I get 2. So I would put an X in slot 2. So what happens if the number repeats? Well, if I've already selected that plot, I don't know if I'm going to get a repeating number or not, but if I've already selected that plot, then I can't reselect it. So I ignore that number until I get 10 unique numbers, and I put an X in that place on the grid or where I'm going to harvest. So if you go to the next page, it's asking you to do stratified. So be sure you understand what stratified is. And this says renumber the plots from 1 to 10 in vertical columns. In vertical columns. So vertical is up and down, so this would be column 1. And this next one would be column 2, and so forth. Now, how am I supposed to collect these plots? It says using the random generator, so I could use my calculator, I could use the table, or I could use the one online. It says, let's see, I'm going to pick one from each of those slots. So stratified says don't pick the whole column, pick one from each of those columns. So using my calculator, I'm going to clear it out. I went into math, over to probability, down to randint, and I'm going to select a number from 1 to 10 this time. Why only 10? In the yellow, there are 10 numbers. Whoop, I picked the wrong one, didn't I? So I'll go back and do that. Good practice for us. Go down to randint, and I'm going to pick numbers between 1 and 10. And again, why 1 and 10? In slot 9, in vertical row 1, I want plot 9. Okay, stratified says select one from each. So I'm going to hit enter again. I want 10 in number 2. So now I'm moving on to the third one. So I'm going to hit a number, and now I want 10. I can still have 10. It's not overlapping because I'm in the third strata. There are 10 stratas. And lastly, this one's asking you to do a cluster, and it's at a vertical column. So you have 10 of these vertical columns. I'll shade some of them in different colors. You have 10 of those. If I use my calculator, I want one of those vertical clusters. Okay, and if I look, The last page actually gives me the yield, how much I got from each plot. Some of these ways or techniques of sampling are much better than others. So what you're to do is figure out which one do you think is best and justify why.